They say success belongs to those who can focus. But what if the real secret to focus is not discipline, not willpower, not motivation, but repetition? Yes, repetition. Because repetition creates belief, and belief fuels clarity, and clarity. That's the birthplace of unstoppable focus. Here's the truth no one tells you: the mind is noisy by nature. It will wander, it will chase distractions, it will rebel. But you can reprogram it line by line, thought by thought, command by command. Say this 100 times: I control my focus. I control my mind. I choose what matters. This isn't just a mantra, it's a weapon, a declaration of war against distraction. Every time you say it, you're not just speaking to the world, you're speaking to yourself. You're writing new code in the software of your brain. Repetition rewires the brain. This isn't just a motivational idea, it's a scientific truth backed by neuroscience. The brain learns through repetition. Every thought you repeat, every word you say, every belief you reinforce starts to form neural pathways. At first, these pathways are weak, like a trail in the woods, but with enough repetition, they become highways: automatic, fast, and dominant. When it comes to focus, most people assume they either have it or they don't. They think it's a natural trait, something you're born with or something you magically tap into when you're in the zone. But focus is a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained, sharpened, and mastered by repeating a phrase like, I control my focus, I control my mind, I choose what matters. You're doing something incredibly powerful. You're taking a mental concept, control over attention, and turning it into a command. And when you say that command over and over again, your brain begins to listen. It begins to adjust. At first, it may seem forced. You might not even believe it. But that's the point. Repetition works not because you believe something, but because over time it makes you believe it. The more you say it, the more your brain wires it in. Eventually, what felt unnatural becomes your default. This is how habits are formed. This is how professional athletes, performers, military leaders, and high achievers train their minds. They know that under pressure, the brain doesn't rise to the occasion, it falls to its level of training. And the best training is repetition. Think about how often you repeat the wrong messages to yourself. I'm tired. I'm distracted. I can't focus. Every time you say these things, even silently, you're reinforcing the problem. You're strengthening the wrong neural pathways. But when you deliberately flip the script and say, I control my focus, you're interrupting that pattern. You're inserting new software into your mental operating system. This isn't about pretending distractions don't exist. It's about building the inner muscle that overpowers them. When you repeat a command 100 times, you're not just talking, you're programming. You're teaching your brain what matters. You're prioritizing focus as a value, as an identity, as a way of life. That shift, repeated enough times, transforms how you show up in every moment. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop drifting and start directing your attention like a laser. This is the essence of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change itself based on experience, intention, and repetition. The mistake most people make is underestimating the power of simple repetition. They want complex solutions. They look for hacks and tools, but the most powerful tool you have is your voice. When you use it with intention, when you speak a truth into your own mind and do it consistently, change becomes inevitable. You may not notice it at first. The first few times you say it, your mind will resist. The old program will fight back. That's normal. That's expected. But if you stay with it, something begins to shift. You'll catch yourself more quickly when your attention wanders. You'll begin to notice how much of your focus was being wasted. You'll become more aware, more centered, more in control, not because of some external tool, but because of a phrase you chose to repeat. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need silence. You don't need a perfect morning routine. You just need your voice and the willingness to repeat a command that reshapes your mind. This is how you take your power back from distractions. This is how you eliminate the feeling of being scattered. Because repetition is the bridge between where you are and the identity you want to step into. You can read all the books and set all the goals, but if your inner voice is saying something different, you'll stay stuck. The brain doesn't change from information alone. It changes from repetition with emotion. When you say something 100 times and mean it, you infuse that message with energy. That energy sinks into your subconscious. That's when transformation begins. That's when clarity replaces chaos. That's when noise starts to fade and focus starts to dominate. All from one repeated phrase. One simple sentence. Spoken with consistency, spoken with belief, spoken like your future depends on it. Because it does. Affirmations override distractions. In a world that constantly battles for your attention, your most powerful defense is not shutting the world out. It's building a voice within that's louder, clearer, and more intentional than the noise outside. That voice comes from affirmations. Distractions don't always announce themselves boldly. They creep in subtly, disguised as urgency, disguised as entertainment, disguised as necessity. One moment you're working, the next you're checking notifications, clicking on something unrelated, thinking about something irrelevant. Your focus isn't stolen, it's surrendered in small doses. But you can train your mind to fight back, to recognize the pull and resist it, not through force, but through internal dialogue. And that dialogue is crafted through what you say repeatedly to yourself. When you repeat a phrase like, I control my focus, I control my mind, I choose what matters, you're not just filling space, you're directing attention. You're creating a filter through which your brain begins to process reality. Every time you say it, you remind yourself of who you are and what you value. The brain works in alignment with what it believes. So if you allow distraction to become a habit, your mind will seek it automatically. But when you introduce a conscious affirmation, one rooted in power, clarity, and identity, you interrupt that automatic loop. You insert a new program, one that brings your attention back to center. Distraction thrives in silence and the absence of deliberate thought. When the mind is left on autopilot, it chooses comfort over challenge, novelty over depth, dopamine over discipline. But affirmations give the mind a job. They give it direction. They act like a mental compass, keeping you pointed toward your purpose, even when the winds of temptation blow strong. Every time you say, I control my focus, you're cutting through the fog. You're telling your brain, this is who I am. This is what we're doing. And the brain listens? Not immediately, not after one time, but with repetition and emotion. It begins to obey. It begins to prioritize what you feed it most often. This is why affirmations are more than just positive thinking. They are mental commands. The reason most people don't experience their power is because they either don't say them consistently or they say them passively without conviction. But when you repeat an affirmation 100 times with energy and certainty, it becomes a force. It becomes louder than doubt, louder than distraction. It becomes the dominant voice in your head. And when that voice is strong, you begin to see the world differently. You start to recognize distraction before it consumes you. You catch yourself reaching for your phone and something inside says, no, this doesn't serve me. That voice, the one that interrupts the automatic urge, is born from affirmations. The truth is, the world will not slow down for you to find focus. It's only getting louder, faster, more invasive. If you don't build a strong internal voice, you'll be swept away by every current that passes. But when you plant a phrase in your mind and water it with repetition, it becomes your anchor. It grounds you. It reminds you. It saves you from drifting. And the more you say it, the deeper it roots itself into your identity. Eventually, it becomes more than a phrase. It becomes your operating system. You start thinking like a focused person, acting like one, making decisions like one, because that's what affirmations do. They bridge the gap between who you are now and who you're becoming. You can't silence every distraction outside of you, but you can silence the urge to give in to them. You can quiet the inner noise that says, just one more scroll. It's not a big deal. You can refocus later. That noise can't survive when it's being drowned by a stronger, more intentional voice. That voice is your affirmation. It's your inner command. It's the line you speak until your mind falls in line. The repetition doesn't just change your thinking, it rewrites your focus habits. And habits, over time, shape your destiny. Distraction wants your attention. Your affirmation claims it back. The moment you choose to speak with authority, to say out loud what you want to feel inside, you take back control. Not just once, not for a moment, but every single time you say the words and mean them. That is how affirmations override distractions, not by force, but by persistence. Not by wishing, but by speaking. Not once, but 100 times, with belief, with intention, with fire. Focus is trained, not gifted. That's the truth most people overlook. They assume some people are just naturally disciplined, born with laser-like attention, able to lock in and stay on task effortlessly. But the reality is far different. Focus is not a talent, it's a mental muscle, and like any muscle, it only grows through consistent, deliberate training. Just like you wouldn't expect to walk into a gym for the first time and lift the heaviest weight, you can't expect your mind to instantly stay centered when it has never been conditioned. If your focus is weak, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means you haven't built the muscle yet. The mind is shaped by what you expose it to repeatedly. If it's constantly being pulled in every direction, notifications, emails, distractions, endless scrolling, it becomes scattered, unfocused, chaotic. And the more you allow that scattered thinking, the more natural it becomes. But when you decide to train your mind to deliberately practice focus every single day, you start building the strength most people lack. And training doesn't mean doing something dramatic. It means committing to small, powerful habits like repeating a focus-driven affirmation every day. Saying, I control my focus, I control my mind, I choose what matters isn't just a motivational line. It's a workout for your mind. Every repetition is a mental rep. Every time you say it, you're tightening the slack that distraction has created. You're pulling your thoughts back into alignment with your goals. Training focus requires intention. It doesn't happen by accident. You have to create the space for it. That space can be a few minutes in the morning, right after you wake up, or right before you start a task, or when your mind starts to wander. In those moments, you pull out your mental weights, you speak your affirmation, not casually, not mindlessly, but with presence, with energy, with belief. And in doing that, you're training your brain to stay with what matters. The repetition is not about perfection, it's about programming. Just like you program your muscles through consistent effort, you program your mind through repeated focus. People often wait for motivation before they begin training their focus, but that's the trap. Focus doesn't come from feeling good, it comes from choosing discipline even when you don't feel like it. That's what separates those who struggle with attention from those who master it. The masters don't rely on conditions, they rely on commitment. They make focus a lifestyle, not a once-in-a-while event. And the affirmation becomes the foundation of that lifestyle. It's simple. It's powerful. And when said enough, it creates transformation from the inside out. What most people don't realize is how much power they give away by not training their focus. Every time you let yourself drift without resistance, you're reinforcing distraction. But every time you say, I control my focus, even when your mind is wandering, even when your environment is chaotic, you're training yourself to return to control. It's not about never getting distracted, it's about reducing how long you stay distracted. That reduction is where your power lies. That's the sign of a trained mind. Training focus also builds confidence. The more you prove to yourself that you can stay on task, that you can direct your attention instead of letting it run wild, the more certain you become in your own abilities. You stop questioning whether you're capable. You start knowing that you are, because your actions back it up. That confidence spills over into everything: your work, your relationships, your sense of purpose. And it all starts with a simple decision to train your mind to take ownership of your attention, to stop wishing you had focus and start building it, one repetition at a time. There's no shortcut, no secret hack, no magic app that can replace the inner work of training your focus. You have to want it. You have to be willing to show up for it. And most importantly, you have to speak it into existence. Your affirmation becomes your training ground. It becomes the place where you remind yourself every day that focus is not something others have, and you don't. It's something you're building right now, word by word, thought by thought, choice by choice. That mindset separates the distracted from the disciplined. It separates those who wait for focus from those who create it. And every time you repeat your affirmation, you're choosing creation, you're choosing growth. You're choosing to train the part of your mind that most people ignore. And in doing so, you become powerful in a way the world can't shake. Because your focus is no longer dependent on circumstance, it's built from within. Words shape identity. What you say about yourself to yourself becomes the blueprint of who you believe you are. And who you believe you are determines what you do, how you act, and how you react to the world around you. The average person doesn't realize the power of the words they repeat daily. They casually say things like, I can't focus, I'm always distracted, I'm not that disciplined, and they think those words are just expressions of how they feel. But in truth, they're writing code into their subconscious. That code becomes the default operating system of the mind. It runs silently, consistently, and with more influence than most people ever understand. You don't rise above the words you speak, you fall in line with them. When you choose to repeat affirmations like, I control my focus, I control my mind, I choose what matters, you are deliberately reshaping your identity. You're telling your mind who you are becoming. And over time, that message gets accepted as truth. At first, it might feel like you're lying to yourself. You might say it but not feel it. But that's how all transformation begins, by interrupting the old story with a new one, even before you believe it. The words come first, and the belief follows. Repetition doesn't just change your thoughts, it changes the way you see yourself. And when you see yourself differently, you behave differently, you make different choices. You hold yourself to a higher standard because your internal identity won't allow you to operate at a lower level anymore. This is how people evolve, not by waking up one day magically disciplined, but by consistently feeding their minds new language, new beliefs, new identities until the new becomes normal. Your focus improves not just because of what you do, but because of what you believe you are capable of. And belief is built through words. Words repeated, reinforced, and spoken with intention. The person who repeats a focused affirmation 100 times a day isn't just hoping to get better, they are transforming their self-concept. They are becoming someone who sees themselves as focused, grounded, in control. That identity influences everything from the way they structure their day to how they respond to pressure. It rewires the baseline. There's a reason world-class performers speak affirmations before performing. It's not superstition, it's psychological priming. They know that their self-talk determines their state, and their state determines their results. When you say powerful words with certainty, you shift your energy. You activate a part of yourself that wants to show up with excellence. But when you constantly use disempowering language, you reinforce a version of yourself that will always fall short of your potential. Most people think their environment determines who they are, but in truth, it's their language. Two people can be in the same situation, one saying, this is tough, but I've got this, the other saying, this always happens to me. Same event, completely different identities being shaped by words. Focus is not just a mental skill, it's a reflection of identity. And identity is built through repetition of what you say to yourself when no one is listening. When you repeat that affirmation over and over, it becomes your inner voice. The same voice that will later say, stay with it, when your mind starts to drift. The same voice that says you don't need to check that right now when a notification pops up. That voice doesn't show up randomly. It's built. And you build it with every repetition of empowering language. The beautiful part is you don't have to wait until you feel like a focused person to begin. You just have to start saying it daily, saying it even when you don't believe it. Because belief isn't required at the beginning, only willingness. As you continue, the words begin to sink in. They go from sounding foreign to sounding familiar, from sounding motivational to sounding like truth. Eventually, they become automatic. That's when the shift has taken root. That's when your focus becomes less of a struggle and more of a reflection of who you are. And it all starts with language. The identity of a focused person is built through repetition, not chance. You don't wait to feel focused to speak with certainty. You speak with certainty. You speak with certainty until you feel focused. That's how identity works. It bends to the words you speak with the most consistency. And the moment you understand that, you realize that every time you speak, you are either building your power or giving it away. Words aren't just descriptions, they're instructions. And when you give your mind the right instructions long enough, it begins to obey. You start to become what you speak. You begin to live in alignment with the words that once felt out of reach. Focus requires emotional control. It's not just about removing distractions around you, it's about mastering the storm within you. You can sit in a quiet room, put your phone away, close all your tabs, and still be completely unfocused if your emotions are hijacking your mind. When you're anxious, irritated, overwhelmed, or restless, your attention scatters. You chase thoughts instead of directing them. You become reactive instead of intentional. And this is where most people lose the battle for focus, not because they don't have the tools, but because they haven't learned to regulate their internal state. When your emotions are all over the place, your focus follows. Your mind obeys your mood unless you've trained it to lead regardless of how you feel. This is why focus begins with self-awareness. You have to know what you're feeling and how it's influencing your behavior. Most people are completely unaware of the emotions pulling the strings behind their lack of concentration. They think they're just procrastinating, but underneath that delay is fear or doubt or even frustration. Emotional chaos creates mental chaos, and you can't fix chaos by forcing your way through it. You have to calm the inner noise first. That calm doesn't always come from silence. It often comes from repetition. From speaking steady, grounded words in the middle of emotional turbulence. From reminding yourself, I control my focus. I control my mind. I choose what matters, even when your emotions are pulling you in 10 different directions. This is where affirmations become your anchor. When your mind is spinning, emotions racing, you bring it all back to center by repeating the phrase that reminds you who you are. You don't try to argue with your emotions or suppress them, you acknowledge them, but you don't let them drive the car. You become the observer, the guide, the commander of your own energy. That doesn't mean you won't feel distracted or frustrated. It means those feelings won't define your next move. Because the person who can focus through emotion is the person who wins the long game. Life doesn't wait for you to feel perfect. The world doesn't pause until your mind is in a peaceful state. So you must learn to focus in the middle of discomfort. And that ability starts with emotional discipline. There will be days when your emotions feel heavier than usual. Days when your mind wants to spiral into old habits, into worry, into impatience. That's when your training matters most. Anyone can focus when they're in a good mood, when everything is going their way. But the real power shows up when you're able to breathe through the stress, repeat your truth, and stay locked into your mission regardless of how you feel. This isn't about denying your emotions, it's about not giving them authority over your attention. Feel what you need to feel, but don't hand over the keys to your mind. Focus is not just a mental practice, it's emotional leadership. The way you speak to yourself in emotional moments determines whether you drift or direct. People who master focus are not emotionless, they are emotionally intelligent. They've learned that emotions are signals, not commands. A signal of fear doesn't mean stop. A signal of restlessness doesn't mean shift your attention. It just means something within you wants comfort or clarity. And sometimes the greatest clarity comes from staying with the task, breathing through the urge to escape, and proving to yourself that your feelings don't get to dictate your performance. That level of control is built slowly through repetition, through speaking the same phrase over and over until it becomes stronger than your impulses. When you repeat your affirmation in an emotionally charged moment, it acts as a pattern interrupt. It snaps your mind out of emotional autopilot. It reminds you that you are not your emotions, you are the one who observes, who decides, who chooses where your energy goes. And that choice, repeated daily, turns into a powerful skill. Emotional control doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you feel fully but choose wisely. And wisdom and focus is choosing what matters over what feels urgent, choosing stillness over reaction, choosing discipline over comfort. That choice is not always easy, but it becomes easier when your mind is trained, and your mind becomes trained when your emotions no longer run the show. That's how you protect your focus. That's how you lead yourself with power. Discipline is what creates freedom. Most people get this backwards. They think freedom is doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But that kind of freedom often leads to chaos, to regret, to being controlled by impulses and distractions. Real freedom, the kind that allows you to focus deeply, work purposefully, and build something meaningful, only comes through discipline. Discipline is what builds structure, and structure is what makes progress predictable. Without it, you're guessing your way through life, jumping from one thing to the next, reacting instead of creating. Focus doesn't come from waiting for the perfect mood or the right conditions. It comes from committing to structure, to routines, to systems that protect your attention and channel it toward what matters most. People want to be more focused, but they don't want to follow a plan. They want results, but they resist rules. That resistance is what keeps them stuck, because focus is not about feeling, it's about following through. You show up whether you feel like it or not. You execute the plan, not because you're in the mood, but because you've made a decision about the kind of person you want to be. That's the core of discipline. It's identity-driven. You discipline yourself not because it's easy, but because it aligns with the version of you that you're building. And when you truly understand that, you stop looking at discipline as restriction and start seeing it as the foundation of freedom. The freedom to move forward, the freedom to create momentum, the freedom to direct your life rather than being tossed around by everything that demands your attention. Repetition of a powerful affirmation reinforces that discipline. When you say, I control my focus, I control my mind, I choose what matters, you're not just calming yourself down, you're reminding yourself of your standard. You're affirming that you follow through. That you are the type of person who doesn't wait to feel motivated. The type of person who keeps showing up again and again because the mission matters more than the mood. That's the mental edge most people lack. They chase motivation when they should be building systems. They wait for a spark when they should be building a schedule. Discipline doesn't rely on sparks, it builds fire through consistency. Structure is not about being rigid. It's about being intentional. You create routines not to limit yourself, but to free yourself from decision fatigue, from scattered thinking, from unnecessary chaos. The more structured your environment, your habits, and your schedule, the more energy you have left to focus on what really matters. Every distraction you remove, every boundary you create, every system you follow, that's one less decision your brain has to make. And that's more energy left for deep work, for purpose, for results. The undisciplined person is not free, they're just constantly overwhelmed by choices. The disciplined person limits their choices so they can maximize their impact. That's the paradox most people don't understand. Limitation, when chosen with intention, leads to more focus, more clarity, and more success. If you want to be focused, you have to stop relying on willpower and start designing your life to support your intentions. That means setting time blocks for your most important work. That means removing digital clutter that pulls you off course. That means creating morning and evening routines that reset your brain and protect your peace. Focus isn't accidental, it's designed. And that design is the result of disciplined decisions repeated daily. Each time you say your affirmation, you're reinforcing that design. You're telling your brain, this is who we are now. You're shifting your self-image from someone who tries to stay focused to someone who simply is focused because they've created a life that makes focus easier to sustain. The disciplined mind doesn't get there overnight. It's built one choice at a time, one day at a time. You don't need to do it all perfectly. You just need to show up consistently. And every time you show up, every time you follow through on a routine, every time you stick to your plan, even when distractions call your name, you're becoming more of who you're meant to be. The power of discipline isn't just in what it helps you achieve, it's in who it helps you become. Someone who's grounded, someone who's clear, someone who doesn't waste time and energy on things that don't matter. That identity is forged in the fire of repetition and structure. It's shaped by the systems you commit to and the standards you refuse to lower. And that's how discipline becomes freedom, the kind of freedom that makes focus a lifestyle, not a struggle. Focus is like a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows through resistance. It's not something you're born with, it's something you build. Every time you choose to stay locked into a task when your mind wants to wander, you're training that muscle. Every time you resist the temptation to check your phone, to scroll mindlessly, to shift gears prematurely, you're strengthening your focus. But here's the truth most people overlook. Muscle doesn't grow through ease. It grows through tension. Through the struggle, through the moment you want to quit but don't. That's the secret. Focus gets stronger not when it's easy to maintain, but when it's hardest to hold and you hold it anyway. It's in the resistance that your power is forged. Your attention span isn't fixed. It's not something you're stuck with. It's elastic. It stretches with use. If you can currently focus for 10 minutes and you push it to 15 and then 20, you're expanding your capacity. Just like lifting heavier weights at the gym builds strength, staying with uncomfortable focus builds mental stamina. But it doesn't happen randomly, it happens with intention. You have to train it. You have to create moments of challenge and then commit to working through them. And that's why repetition is essential. When you repeat a powerful affirmation like I control my focus, I control my mind, I choose what matters, you're not just motivating yourself, you're conditioning your mind to lean into discomfort rather than escape from it. Most people never train their focus because they don't understand the role of discomfort. The moment they feel bored, they shift. The moment something feels mentally heavy, they distract themselves. But that's the exact moment you should lean in, because that's the moment your focus muscle has the chance to grow. Discomfort is the signal that you're about to level up, but only if you push through. If you retreat, you stay the same. If you persist, even for just a few more minutes, you expand what's possible. And that's how growth works, incrementally, deliberately, through resistance. Focus training is not just about attention, it's about endurance. To train focus like a muscle, you have to give it a schedule. You can't just hope it gets stronger. You need focused blocks of time, dedicated sessions of undistracted work. Start small, maybe just 25 minutes at a time, like the Pomodoro method suggests. Then slowly increase the duration as your brain adapts. The goal is to stay with the task long enough to feel the urge to leave it and then choose not to. That single moment, that single choice is where the training happens. You are building mental toughness every time you resist the easy way out. And what makes this sustainable is the language you use in those moments. The right phrase said at the right time becomes your second wind. It reminds you why you started. It reminds you that you're not weak, not distracted by default, you're just in training. And training takes time. Focus training isn't glamorous. It's not always exciting. But it's transformative. It reprograms your relationship with time, with effort, with discomfort. It builds self-trust because you prove to yourself that you can stay with something even when every part of you wants to quit. That kind of trust changes everything. It spills into every area of life, your work, your relationships, your goals. Because once you've trained your mind to be still and stay, you can direct it anywhere. You become a weapon. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. But none of that happens by accident. It happens because you chose to push past what was comfortable and speak life into your effort through repetition. There will be moments when your mind screams for escape, when you feel like you've hit your limit, when the task in front of you feels too heavy or too long. That's the growth point. That's the exact place where you either back down or break through. And if you've been consistent with your affirmations, you'll have a voice inside you that says, stay with it. You've got more. That voice doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from training. From all the previous moments where you pushed just a little further than you thought you could. That's how focus grows, quietly, consistently. Through resistance, through repetition, through choosing the hard thing one more time. That's what builds the kind of focus that can't be broken. That's how you become unshakable. When it comes to focus, your environment plays a massive role in shaping your ability to concentrate. It's easy to underestimate how much your surroundings influence your ability to stay on task. The truth is, distractions are not only external, they can be internal, but the external ones feed into that internal chaos. If you're surrounded by clutter, noise, or constant interruptions, your mind constantly has to work overtime to block out those distractions. This is why environment matters so much. It's not just about the physical space around you, it's about creating an environment that allows you to protect your focus from the constant bombardment of stimuli. The more you can control your environment, the less your focus is fighting for survival. The less effort you need to expend resisting distractions, the more energy you can pour into your task. You might think you can just power through distractions and still remain productive, but the truth is, you're always working against the current when you're constantly pulled in different directions. A cluttered desk, a noisy room, or even constant notifications on your phone all demand attention from your brain, even if you don't realize it. Every time your attention shifts, your brain has to reset. That takes time and energy. The more you can limit the number of times your attention is forced to split, the more time you have for deep, focused work. That's why you need to curate your environment as if it's a sanctuary for your focus. It needs to be a space that encourages deep work and eliminates as many distractions as possible. This doesn't mean you need to create a sterile, lifeless space. You just need to be intentional. For example, a clean desk with only the essentials tells your brain this is where focus happens. A phone placed in another room or on do not disturb mode signals to your brain that it's time for undistracted work. The fewer things your mind has to tune out, the more it can zero in on the task at hand. And it's not just physical clutter, it's mental clutter, too. When you're constantly thinking about unrelated tasks, unresolved issues, or emotional stress, it's like trying to focus with a foggy mind. This is why clearing your mental space is just as important as clearing your physical space. Your mind is a reflection of your environment. The more cluttered and distracted your surroundings, the harder it is for your mind to settle into focus. This is where intentionality becomes crucial. Your environment should be designed for the task you're about to engage in. If you're writing, you don't want to be in a place where meetings are happening, phones are ringing, and people are constantly passing by. If you're focusing on a deep project, make sure your space fosters that kind of work. Think of your environment as the support system for your focus. Whether it's the music you listen to, the type of lighting you use, the chair you sit in, or the absence of distractions, everything you allow into your environment should encourage the work you're doing, not detract from it. When you take the time to design your surroundings in a way that prioritizes focus, you set yourself up for success. This intentional design isn't about making your environment perfect, it's about making it conducive to the mental state you need to enter to do your best work. The power of this approach is that it minimizes the need for willpower. People often think that staying focused is about sheer willpower, but willpower is a limited resource. What you need is an environment that allows your natural ability to focus to flourish. You create the right circumstances, and the focus happens almost automatically. If your environment is already primed for success, you don't have to waste energy fighting against the distractions. It becomes a natural flow. And this principle doesn't only apply to your physical surroundings, it applies to your digital environment as well. In today's world, our devices are a constant source of distraction. Notifications pop up, emails flood in, and social media calls to us. But when you design your digital space to support your focus by silencing unnecessary notifications, limiting apps that don't serve your goal, and setting boundaries for when you check your devices, you protect your focus from the outside world. Your environment also plays a role in your emotional state. When you create a space that feels calm, organized, and supportive, it subconsciously communicates to your brain that this is a safe, focused space. It creates a sense of control and peace, which allows you to settle into your work with a clear mind. Think about it. When your environment is chaotic, it mirrors internal chaos, which makes it harder for you to concentrate. But when you control the environment, you're sending a clear signal to your mind that it's time to focus and work. This peace of mind, fostered by a well-designed space, creates the ideal foundation for your concentration to thrive. By curating your environment with intention, you remove the obstacles that force your attention to wander. Every time you remove a distraction from your surroundings, whether physical or digital, you're investing in your focus. The fewer things that demand your attention, the more of it you can devote to what matters. Creating a space where your focus is not constantly under attack frees up the mental resources you need to dive deep into your work and stay there for longer periods of time. And with time, your brain starts to associate that space with focus, which means it will become easier to slip into a state of deep work each time you step into that environment. Your environment, when intentionally cultivated, becomes a partner in your focus journey. One of the most powerful tools for maintaining focus is the ability to say no to things that don't serve your highest priorities. People often think that success comes from saying yes to every opportunity that comes their way, but in reality, it's the people who master the art of saying no who achieve the most meaningful progress. Every time you say yes to something, you're committing time and energy, and you're shifting your focus away from something else. The more things you say yes to, the more diluted your attention becomes. This is where clarity comes into play. You have to be crystal clear about what truly matters to you, what aligns with your goals, your values, and your vision for the future. When you know exactly what your priorities are, it becomes much easier to evaluate every new request, opportunity, or distraction that comes your way. You simply ask yourself, does this align with my purpose? Does this help me get closer to my goals? If the answer is no, you confidently say no. Saying no isn't just about protecting your time, it's about protecting your energy. Every task, meeting, or request you take on drains your mental and emotional resources. The more you pile onto your plate, the less mental energy you have for the things that really matter. Focus is a limited resource, and if you're constantly spreading yourself thin, you won't have enough left to give to your most important tasks. The key is to conserve your energy for what truly moves the needle in your life and work. The more you practice saying no to things that don't align with your priorities, the more energy you'll have for the things that do. This allows you to pour your full attention into the projects and tasks that matter most without constantly feeling distracted or overwhelmed. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear disappointing others, missing out, or appearing uncooperative. However, saying no isn't about being rude or dismissive. It's about being respectful of your own time and energy. It's about acknowledging that you cannot do everything. And that's okay. When you say no to something, you're saying yes to yourself, to your goals, and to your focus. You're making a choice to prioritize what's important and to protect the space you need to create meaningful progress. Saying no is also about setting healthy boundaries. It's about being clear with others about what you're able and willing to do and not overcommitting out of guilt or obligation. Healthy boundaries allow you to focus on what truly matters without feeling like you're constantly being pulled in different directions. One of the most effective ways to stay focused is to establish a no list things you commit to saying no to on a regular basis. This could include unnecessary meetings, distractions, people who drain your energy, or tasks that don't contribute to your long-term goals. The more specific you can be about what you will not do, the easier it becomes to stick to your focus. It's a proactive strategy that prevents you from being overwhelmed by new obligations before you even have a chance to consider them. When you have a clear understanding of your priorities and a firm no list in place, it's much easier to guard your time and energy from things that don't serve you. Saying no also gives you the space to say yes to the things that matter. When you say no to distractions, you open up the time and mental clarity needed to say yes to deep work, to high priority tasks, and to activities that move you closer to your long-term vision. Focus thrives in a space where distractions are minimal and your energy is reserved for what truly matters. Saying no isn't just about cutting things out, it's about creating room for the things that truly align with your goals. It's about creating the mental space necessary to maintain deep focus, creativity, and productivity. But saying no isn't always easy, especially when the stakes feel high. You might worry about missing out or not being helpful to others. However, every time you say yes to something that isn't aligned with your purpose, you're trading away your ability to be your best self. When you practice saying no, you get better at it. You become more confident in your ability to protect your time. And you build trust with yourself that you will follow through on your commitment to focus. Saying no becomes a practice of self-respect and self-care. It's about honoring the fact that your time, attention, and energy are finite resources, and you deserve to spend them in ways that matter. Ultimately, focus is a choice. It's a decision you make every day to protect your energy and attention from being fragmented by the demands of others. Saying no allows you to make that choice more effectively. By learning to say no with confidence and clarity, you open the door to a life of deeper focus, greater productivity, and more meaningful success.